All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Scott, and I'm the Director of Storytelling and Engagement at the global nonprofit climate solutions resource Project Drawdown. And I'm just thrilled to have you here for part one in a three-part series that we're doing in collaboration with ecochallenge.org in celebration of the Drawdown Ecochallenge happening this month. And for those who aren't aware, you could check out the Drawdown Ecochallenge at drawdown.ecochallenge.org. But this is the Community Power webinar focused on hearing from folks working together on the theme of working together for climate solutions. So as you could see, we have Elizabeth Ellman joining on behalf of the city of Bexley in Ohio, Tyneese Williams, who is one of our featured Drawdowns Neighborhood Climate Solutions short documentary series interviewees from Feed the Second Line in New Orleans. Venny Middle, who is with the organization JLL and the Aetna Community Organization in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, another Drawdowns Neighborhood interviewee, and Whitney Terrell, who is with the Sierra Club in Minnesota, and with the Drawdowns Neighborhood Twin Cities series that we featured. And so this is the very first webinar in our series of webinars. Very excited to have so many folks joining us live in real time. And again, one thing I just want to encourage before we get to introducing all of the panelists and welcoming them, diving into their stories, hearing more about community power in each of their contexts, is that you could be part of the Drawdown Ecochallenge. And as you can see here, Drawdown Ecochallenge is a fun and social way to connect the dots between climate solutions and climate actions to help reverse climate change. One of many ways that folks could take action, because you're going to be hearing about folks taking action and engaging on this webinar, even beyond Ecochallenge. But I just want to invite folks to check this out and also to visit the homepage where you could register for part 2 and part 3 of the webinar series, one focused on schools and the final one focused on businesses. And you're definitely encouraged to sign up for those, even if you're not, if you don't consider yourself as part of one of those communities. But I will stop sharing my screen because I am thrilled to welcome and invite all of our panelists to share their video, to come on screen, and just thrilled to have you all here as part of today's conversation. But I'm going to stop talking so much because I want to invite each of you to introduce yourself, beginning with Elizabeth Ellman, Sustainability Programs Coordinator at the City of Bexley, which you can learn more about at bexley.org/sustainability. And Elizabeth, could you start us out by just sharing who you are and, in short, why you do the work you do?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I am glad to be engaging with all of you today, and thank you all for being here. My name is Elizabeth Ellman. I am the Sustainability Programs Coordinator at the City of Bexley, Ohio. We are a suburb of Columbus with about 14,000 residents. I do the work that I do because I feel like I'm a guest on this planet, and it's important to me to leave things better than I found it and to be respectful of what's here and all of the people who are also here with me. And I do the work that I do because I can't do all of this alone. It only works when I have people joining me. And so I try to get as many people to help me as possible.
I love that. And I also see a lot of people who are watching love that. So I'd encourage people to react with the emojis. I'm seeing a lot of hearts pop up. And I appreciate what you said, because there's that word community, which is in the title of this conversation. It's a word that I've heard with many folks through our Drawdowns Neighborhood series. One of them being the next person to introduce themselves, Venny Middle, who is an energy and sustainability analyst with the organization JLL and also on the board of directors for a nonprofit called the Aetna Community Organization. And you can learn more about the Aetna Community Organization at aetna.org/community. But Venny, could you introduce who you are and, in short, why you do the work that you do?
Thank you, Matt, for having me. I'm really excited to interact with everyone who is joining this live webinar. So my name is Venny Mittal. I'm an energy and sustainability analyst at JLL. Apart from that, I also serve as a board of directors for a nonprofit called Aetna Community Organization. And Aetna Community is based in Pittsburgh, which is a world's first eco district certified in 2019. So I've been joined with the Etna community from last 2018, and I've been interacted with them and have been their part of their sustainability initiatives. I love what I do because I have seen the power of community when their choices, when their voices are being heard, when they are being seen, and their ideas are being reflected. That's where the community power comes into existence, and you can see how one community can serve an example, a sustainable community for the rest of the communities. It's not just one person, it's the power of people that makes one community sustainable. So I'm really proud of what Etna community is doing, and we are really excited with the upcoming projects, which I'm really excited to share in today's webinar.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Venny. And next up, I'm excited to introduce Tyneese Williams, Executive Director of Feed the Second Line. And you could learn more about feedthesecondline.org. But T, could you tell us, who are you? In short, why do you do the work that you do? It's so powerful. I love this focus on community, but curious to hear from you.
Yes, thank you, Matt. I'm excited and honored to be here. So happy to engage with everyone. My name is Tyneese Williams, and I am the Executive Director of Feed the Second Line in New Orleans, Louisiana. And Feed the Second Line, we tap into the social cohesion of culture groups. So that would be your masking Indians, your second liners, your musicians, your baby dolls, and we just want to foster a sense of community and improve neighborhood outcomes during natural disasters. So our Get Lit, Stay Lit initiative, we create powered microgrids, which allows local restaurants and disadvantaged communities to maintain services following major storms and, other power outages. And I do this work. I am a New Orleans native, born and raised, and I know also well what it is like during a power outage, during a natural disaster. My mom was the mom who we just simply could not afford to evacuate, so we stayed. And so it's just really imperative for me not only to advocate for the culture bearers, but just to advocate for the community as a whole with everything that's going on with climate change, just to make sure we're putting things in place, because we have community members that just won't evacuate. So just empowering, restaurants and community hubs just to be those first responders for our community.
There we go. I love to hear this. I wish I could just listen to all of you all this time, but I'm gonna, last but not least, of course, introduce Whitney Terrell, environmental justice organizer with the Sierra Club, the North Star chapter in Minnesota. Learn more at sierraclub.org/Minnesota. But Whitney, you know the question, who are you? And in short, why do you do the work that you do?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for this invitation, Matt, and the Project Drawdown team. It feels really good to be working on climate as a part of my daily life and my career, because and as a person who grew up in Minnesota, I had the opportunity to go to Wolfridge Environmental Learning Center. So someone who grew up in an urban area, it was one of those first experiences where I really got to go out into greater Minnesota, as we say. And that really left a huge impression on me, to connect a lot of the things that were instilled in me as a young person, just around like a sense of community connectedness and accountability to like others who deeply shaped me, especially in North Minneapolis and the Rondo communities in the Twin Cities area. So now, knowing my passion around climate, it feels really great to be thinking and working on an environmental justice lens, which is really combining a lot of the things that are inherent in my background, especially as someone who's African-American, thinking about anti-racism and other forms of oppression, and then connecting this to climate through the work that I'm doing at the Sierra Club with a lot of other colleagues. It's really, really a great privilege, but it comes from some early exposures that I had to really like conservation and just camping or being out in nature as a young person.
Yeah, Whitney, I want to follow up actually with you to ask one of the first questions or next questions in the conversation, which is really like, why is community an important part of climate solutions? Which might seem like a simple question, but so often when we talk about climate change and climate solutions. We're thinking about the statistics, the data, the science, but not community. And so from your perspective, and I'm curious to hear from all of you, even in response to Whitney as we go on, like, why does community matter in climate solutions?
Community matters because there's no one who can really tell the daily impacts the best or better than communities who are most impacted by climate. And I also think that sometimes as like professionals in a climate space, it's really easy for us to say, like, we want to shut down this incinerator, or we want this river to be clean, or we want this type of clean energy. But if it doesn't really translate to the daily values of daily people, and I can give a good example of that, I think it really becomes sort of an internal conversation within the climate justice community versus something that actually resonates with people's day-to-day. So I've been visiting students at a local high school and their art club, and we've been talking about climate. But what we realize is we can't talk about climate unless we're talking about safety. You know, like one of the first visits that I made to that school, we were on lockdown. Like there was something happening outside. So it just really underscores, like, even as someone who wants to like support this conversation around like climate and critical thought with them, especially through art and organizing, I know that I can't direct them only to climate. I need to let them do the research and ask people in the community and their school community and around them, what does that mean to them? And I think once people are really prepared to think about that or have that opportunity to take a break and reflect, when they show up to governments or community events, community members sharing their story is much more powerful than, like, you know, me showing up every time to speak. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And I'd invite anyone else to jump in and just respond to that and respond to the question and just build on it. Yeah, Tynese.
For me, I just feel like mobilizing that community support, it like amplifies the impact of eco-friendly initiatives. Involving a community helps you advocate for effective climate policies. And when you think about in the communities, like, we are the last to get those resources and, to even just understand what's going on. So just being able to be there and actually give that knowledge and just to foster like a collective sense of responsibility towards environmental sustainability. And, certain communities are affected, so it's very important to have the community involved, to just hear like what's going on. This is what we're suffering from, and what can we do to put change in place collectively together.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I wish someone had a counter for how many times we're using the word community or collective, because like I love that we're hitting that point home, and love that even more people, nearly 200 people are joining this conversation, which is exciting. And yeah, I would invite Venny or Elizabeth to jump in and add to that what you're kind of thinking when it comes to the importance of community, if there's anything you'd want to build on this with. But I also just want to invite participants to add any questions to the Q&A box. Again, we'll have some time as we go along to get to that, but maybe we'll go to you. Oh, there you are, Venny. Yeah, just curious to hear your thoughts too.
I think community really matters, because when we talk about sustainability, we might talk about greenhouse gas emissions, maybe achieving the sustainability goals. But I believe that community is a backbone of addressing climate change or bringing actually quantified, measurable changes. So I have seen that some communities just go unnoticed because they have seen periods of economic distress and environmental threats. Etna has seen such periods, and it rebounded as a resilient community, and it dedicated to improving quality of life, who live, who work, and who play in the borough. And not only that, they emerge as a most equitable and they have achieved the most in the 6 areas of the eco districts, which is food, social equity, mobility, air quality, food. So it's not just sustainability, but it's also what impacts the community. We have seen how food has been the major factor when example, lockdown, when last year it was COVID. I have seen like people didn't have money to even buy simple groceries. But I have seen how Etna took a great step when everybody stepped up and they made huge food donations and they had their gardens, like they planted their own food and they distributed that food in the church. So you can see that how community brings an impactful change when it comes to sustainability. So for example, Etna Eco Park is one of the example I want to give. We have built an Etna Eco Park, which is a place for people where they can sit, enjoy the movements. There was no such park within Etna before. So you can see how those simple and small steps of the community can bring a huge change in the sustainability. So sustainability for me, it's not just bringing actionable or just achieving these emissions reductions. I believe that it's the community that brings a good impact within sustainability. So power of community is totally underrated. So I believe we all can bring a small steps, start from our home and then bring that impact within the community.
That's powerful. And I think it's interesting looking at your work, Elizabeth, and where you're focused with the city of Bexley, because as we've sort of already talked about, or folks have talked about so far, like there's the importance of the community when it comes to just sustainability and climate solutions and moving those things forward, but also there are a lot of other intertwined like co-benefits or other ways that we support communities. And I'd imagine that like in leading the sustainability work in Bexley that you're thinking about the sustainability aspects, but then also community. And I'm just so curious and excited to hear from your lens what this all looks like in Bexley.
Sure. So to T's point where she talked about policy, I think community is really important because despite the coolest policies that we could ever put into place, they're not going to pan out and work well and have the effects that we want unless the community buys into them. So we just started an energy aggregation program where we're really proud to bring renewable rec energy to the city at a significantly reduced price to our general electric program, but it's an opt-out program. And if we don't get people excited about it and engaged, then they're going to opt out and they might not participate. So despite, being a cost saving and being really innovative and neat, without these people telling their neighbors, hey, I just saved $100 on my electric bill last month, you should join this program or make sure you don't opt out, it goes nowhere, really. And something else is that there are many people in the city that are much smarter than I am, be it people who work here and then also advocates, some professors and a lot of resources that we can tap into or that I can tap into. And without having that network and community involvement and engagement, I can only do, so much, whereas these people can shine. And by utilizing their knowledge and their expertise, we can really, make a big difference. And it's their networks as well. And when we all get together, the impact is greater than what it could ever be with just me alone.
I think that's powerful. And it just kind of echoes something that I often think about, which is that like we need to have people from across our communities, from across like different systems or industries or perspectives at the table in order to solve any problem. Like we can't just solve it with one lever or one perspective. And I think you're all really great examples of that. But I want to go back to you, Elizabeth. I'm just bouncing around here because one of the things that I want to get to is just to hear more of how you're working toward taking climate action, stopping climate change or addressing climate change in your community and what that looks like. But I also know that you have leveraged Drawdown Ecochallenge as part of that, amongst many other programs and things that you're doing. So I just want to start and give you space to share more about that, and then hear from others about other ways that they're like tangibly moving climate solutions forward with that community foundation in mind.
Sure. So our sustainability initiatives in the city of Bexley began really kind of with waste and with trees. And we are now getting into the throes of climate action planning and greenhouse gas emission reductions and all that kind of things. But I'm also at the point where I will take whatever I can get from anybody and will, interject into conversations and will post things on the internet. And I thought that Ecochallenge, when I first heard about it about 2 or 3 years ago, was a really great way to get people's feet wet and to help them understand the positive impacts that they can make even on a very small scale. And as I'm doing that more often and more often, I'm hoping that I'm kind of reeling them in and getting them to understand that their recycling is important, and that's great and fantastic. And then there's 12 other things that we can also do that might not be so hard and will have a really big impact as well. So we are currently working on a carbon action plan, climate action plan. And we're getting into the throes of that, but also using community feedback, which we will be seeking out shortly, to again hear from people what they are willing and interested in partaking in. So that way, when we write this plan, it is something that can be effective and utilized by the people and will have tangible results because it's things that they are willing to do.
Like one thing that jumps out to me, and again, very much curious to hear from the panelists with responses to that, but you touched on something that I just want to underscore even, which is the power of individual actions to reel people in, because so often when the conversation around individual actions is a complicated one. We need these really big systemic actions to move significant change forward. But at the same time, a lot of that starts with people getting comfortable with oh, this is what reducing food waste or composting or solar looks like. And this is what the benefits are in my community. But very curious to hear from anyone else who wants to jump in. Tiny.
I'll say, we're working towards drawdown with resiliency building. For instance, Get Lit, Stay Lit, it's a scalable solution to actually grow our resiliency while expanding the green sector economy and job opportunities just for our community members, creating that stronger safety net, in the event of a natural disaster, and just going out in the community and just hearing their needs and addressing them head on, being able to actually offer, a workforce side of it for the culture bearers in our community. It's okay, this tradition is a tradition, that's been going on for over 100 years. But with inflation, we all know the cost of everything, it's very expensive. And there are not a lot of jobs out there, that community members can just access, right? So having that workforce program and partnering with 2 other organizations where the culture bearers can actually go through that, get that certification, and creating a career pathway in solar, being able to actually, actually install these solar panels. So whereas they could be working at a job where they're getting paid minimum wage, $7.25, $10 an hour, to where they're starting off working $20 an hour, but they're actually doing a job that will help the environment as a whole, which will actually help the community. And then now they're getting that knowledge and understanding about climate, and they can actually bring that back into the community as well. So.
Wow. And I'll call this out just even before Venny or Whitney jump in, but I love hearing the words jobs, the word health, the word safety mentioned by Whitney earlier, right? So all of these other ways that we could support the things that people might be thinking about or caring about, even more than just climate and emissions. It's really powerful to see that. But yes, very curious just to give you, Venny or Whitney, a chance to brag more about some of the tangible work you're doing in your communities to move solutions forward, whatever that looks like and means to you all.
Sure, I can go. So Etna embarked on its eco-district journey in 2017, and when we got a certification of eco-district in 2019, we had some actionable items that we wanted to implement towards the eco-district goals. So one of the major projects is a library project. that we are working on. Currently, Etna community does not have a library. So that is something, a big vision that we said that we really wanted to have a library where people can come. It's not just about people coming there, but also promoting like events, what people want. And through the power of the other board members of my organization who have like spent their blood, tears, sweat on writing the grants and having all of these different workshops, different webinars, and different fundraising events, and which we have collected different donations from these local and state government organizations, our dream has actually come true. We are working towards the library. Our library will actually start building next year. So this is the dream that we have been living for, like when we achieved our first eco district. So now, like Etna, along with its neighbors, Millvale and Sharpsburg, we all are engaged in a partnership known as the Triborough Eco District that allows the 3 municipalities to collaborate on shared initiatives and increases each community's capacity to reach their own eco district goals. So Etna has come out to be the most resilient, most equitable community. So building a library means that we have solved the problem of social equity, we have solved the problem of people going to the other neighborhood areas to go into the library. So we will have like our own library system where people can come, thrive, and play, and like make their own memories and their own future. So library is one of the best examples of the Etna community.
That's beautiful. And even just hearing, like, I think so often we overlook things like the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to connect with people, the opportunity to play, to find joy, which is really important in general in communities, especially important in the face of climate change and the climate crisis. But Whitney, I want to go to you for this question, and something just to build on this. I'm curious in general what your thoughts are on this question, but also, like, I think sometimes people struggle to see the connection between environmental justice and inclusion and community, as we've established, and solutions. But I am so curious how you bridge that. Well, maybe it's bridging that gap. I don't know if that's the right wording, but how you sort of bring the two together to move solutions forward in the ways that, matter most to you and the communities that you're centering.
Yeah, thank you. So Sierra Club North Star chapter here in Minnesota is like 50,000 people across the state, even beyond the Twin Cities area. So I often feel like I'm mostly thinking about inclusion because of like my role as an environmental justice organizer. So sometimes what happens is we may advocate for a transportation policy, but internally, for example, because I know that this line, for example, of the proposed light rail that we're advocating for, which is clean, which is environmental, is going to add layers onto planning trauma that communities who've been impacted by exclusive planning decisions that run trains, run highways through our communities. I often find myself in staff meetings or in other conversations just connecting and strategizing with colleagues who might be assigned to transportation or other topics to help us think more strategically about how to leverage this really awesome C4 power of Sierra Club, both within Minnesota, within our region, nationally, to make sure we're kind of, I'm sharing feedback or sharing perspectives that might not be exactly what our total position is as Sierra Club. So when I think about inclusion, and specifically how I'm doing that within my work at Sierra Club, I love that we do have this ability to think politically, which is a little bit different probably than some organizations who are primarily C3, which is more educational. But when I also think about what inclusion means, it is doing the extra work, which is joyful often, to make sure we're going where people are located. So when I first described interacting with youth at a high school, it's because we didn't have enough youth in the most impacted area for an incinerator in our community who are participating in the public dialogue around what zero waste means to them and what it means to get rid of an incinerator. Similarly, we have people who are in like the West Metro area who are starting to make connections with people in the Twin Cities. So we're doing a lot of organizing and coalition building, knowing that community means not just like Sierra Club, but we're partnering with other organizations and working as a big team and trying to prepare community members from lots of different walks of life to see themselves connected to an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's powerful. Again, like I'm just pointing out themes I'm seeing or echoes I'm hearing, but it's not only about like the community. I think so often, well, one, it's good when people are thinking about communities, right? And not just their individual, well, them as individuals, not just their own entities, not just their own organizations, but their communities. But then I also love hearing from you and in all these different examples about just the collaboration across communities, which could be really powerful and important and necessary too, because I mean, like we might have these sort of artificial borders between towns or states and so on and so forth, but we could still work together to make an impact together, especially just knowing not only the shared challenges, but the shared opportunities. And I do want to give you each time and space and invite you as you kind of answer other questions to talk about more just about the impact of your work. But I do actually want to get to or begin to get to some of the questions that we're receiving, because Whitney, there's one that is insanely relevant to what you just said and some of your background. And it's from Reese, who asks, how can young activists better understand and prioritize their local communities? You mentioned youth with some of your work, but I'm just curious how, knowing that especially Drawdown Ecochallenge engages a lot of youth, how can we better engage young people to understand and prioritize community in the process of moving solutions or moving positive change forward?
Yeah, I have found that consistently spending time with young people and letting them know that like I am literally present with them to listen to them and prioritize their interest and what their and their leadership. So when what I've been doing at this local high school is teaching them some methods around mural making, because that's something else that I enjoy, and I bring that into my organizing. And I'll just drop little nodes of like, this is how the process works, and you should just see how they run with it. And I just step back. I'm like, they're running, they already know what to do. They developed a survey, it's going out to their school. They're going to ask the community what they care about. So even though like I'm there on behalf of Sierra Club, and obviously I'm like, I care about climate, everyone, at the school, that's what I letting them know clearly for climate. But the relationship continued because we brought a mural to the school and engaged with youth and showed our intentions and be supportive of their environment. But we noticed that there were empty plywood. So we asked, can we continue the relationship? So I think continuing to be in relationship is what I'm trying to say, because sometimes youth are engaging with people who are inconsistent. So that's why I'm bringing up like consistent engagement and empowering them and letting them lead is what I would encourage. That's what I'm trying out. Let me know what you think.
And I think it's powerful. And just like, oh yeah, go for it, Elizabeth, please.
I just like to jump in on that a little bit.
Yeah.
I have had the pleasure of working with about 400 students in our local school district this year. So I visit each of the 4th grade classrooms in the district once a month, and I've just started visiting with all of the 7th grade science classes. And the kids these days are ready to take things into their own hands. I mean, they are ready to get at it. I have been able to make the connection, not so much with the local schools, but with the teachers individually by posing my engagement with them as a break for the teachers themselves, and saying that you can go take a potty break, you can do your grading, let me hang out with your students. I won't ruin them if I see them for only half an hour a month. And then have been using that time to spread my propaganda. And these kids are so eager to soak it up like a sponge. And then this is how I'm building community, by hoping that they're taking it home to their families and parents who are the decision makers in their households. and talking with their friends, but I have all the confidence in the world that we are in good hands with these kids.
Well,
As
I
long
want to
as we can
actually,
get to them.
I saw a lot of head nods with that too. And I love what you mentioned, like, and because I don't think about that as much as I should, which is like, sure, like sometimes we're just connecting with students or with young people, but then they have the power to influence their friends and family and their communities. And one thing that I think is fascinating, and I don't have the exact statistics in front of me, but I've seen research about how like kids and family members and others who are within our close networks, something I talk about a lot with our storytelling work, like those are some of the most influential people when it comes to convincing folks who might be harder to convince. But just to stick with you, Elizabeth, for a second, and you started to touch on this with youth, and you've mentioned some of the programs, but Liz asks the question, like, how do you engage your city residents? Maybe to build on that a bit, I wonder, like, are there any obstacles you've seen in particular in doing that, and how do you navigate those to engage the community?
Yeah. I think what's helpful for me in this regard is that I don't have a whole lot of shame. And so I'm willing to make a fool out of myself in the name of getting, the green Bexley, which is what we call in the sustainability programs that are forward facing out there. So one of the big things that we started doing pretty early on was bringing our curbside food waste recycling program to city hosted events. And we set up a station where people can drop off their compostables as well as their recycling and trash. And these events happen every summer, and it's a movie series and jazz series. And, we're there, and that's the only place where people can get rid of any of their stuff. So they have to engage with us that way. That's been a big thing, and people are very appreciative of it, and it helps them learn about the program that they can actually do at home. I have great relationships with city council members and with the mayor, and using that, I try to get them to engage and speak to their platforms and their communities, as well as plug into some of our city social media website and our quarterly newsletter that goes out, so we can put things there as well. Again, I've been with the schools. Social media has been a hit or miss. Sometimes really works in our favor, and other times does not give me as much interaction as I'd like. The schools have been really great this year. That's allowed me to get to 400 folks and their families each month, which is really great. And also just like bridging programs with the library, who hosted their own sort of sustainable September program this year, and reaching people that I might not have otherwise reached. Or getting in with the local chamber of commerce and talking to them about ways that they can bring different initiatives to the different businesses. So I try to get out there as much as I can, and in all the different ways that can engage people, and do my best. Some of the difficulties are me being let down by not getting as much engagement and interaction as I'd like. It's a pride thing for me. And I'm always just looking for ways, but when I get knocked down, I use that as an opportunity to try to get out with something bigger and better and more viral than before, which is still a problem because I have yet to be viral. But so please feel to like and subscribe to all of my social media content.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, but I think there's that need for resilience at times, and resilience is a word that we use in a lot of contexts in this space, but resilience in the context of keeping going, getting knocked down, getting back up again, and doing what you need to do. But I know that there's so many questions, and I want to definitely go to Tyneese and Venny with this conversation, but I actually want to put out a question that I think is important for us all to discuss, beginning with you, Whitney, because I know that you have to run soon. One person Mega asks, do all communities, basically it's about communities and their feelings or their outlooks on sustainability. And I definitely want to make sure to ask you this, Whitney, with your work focused on environmental justice. Just to paraphrase the question, like how are the communities that you're working with feeling about sustainability, about climate change and solutions? And again, like how do you navigate any of those barriers or challenges, or any of that resistance that you face to change, positive change?
Yeah, thank you. The work of intersectionality in terms of topics, right? And and audience and identity is like very important. And so I think Tynice was talking about it earlier in terms of like jobs connected to climate. That's something like even in the past organization I worked for, Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light, and then some of the work ongoing at Sierra Club, the solutions have to be intersectional. They have to be multi-tiered so that climate, which I think is often a secondary, a tertiary, like it's not a primary issue for most people. So making sure that it's connected to economic development, that it's connected to other things that they care about is really important. I also think that some communities also just have someone have like within their cultural lens or their language, something that brings forward the importance of climate more than others. So I personally feel like as people who may have English as a first language, or if you're fortunate to have grown up with a language that really offers or animates nature, or you will have a much more like caring outlook. So I'm just saying, like in general, we have a lot of barriers as people who may have English, and I think many people in this call may not have English as their primary language or that they grew up with. But I think that puts us at a disadvantage if we're using English on a daily basis, because nature and the natural world are not like beings or relatives that we're thinking about. So some cultures are advantaged. And so I think it adds, even if it's not already a priority, our language and like sometimes our cultural ways like push it down even further. So we have to do more work to get to prioritizing it. And I think that intersection of priorities that communities have make it easier to connect climate to those priorities.
Thank you so much
for
Whitney.
having me here, and I'm sorry to have to hop a little early.
No, we're thankful for the time that we did have with you. So you have important things to do out in the world. And thank you for the time that you were able to contribute, Whitney, but I'm sure we'll be in touch again soon. So thank you for that. And one thing I'll mention just as Whitney logs off is that if you want to hear more from Whitney, and I'm biased in recommending this, but I encourage folks to check out the Drawdown's Neighborhood series at drawdown.org/neighborhood, a climate solutions short documentary series focused on primarily, just like the rest of our Drawdown Stories work, passing the mic to voices and communities that definitely should be more represented in the climate conversation and the dialogue. But I want to bounce over to Tynice, to Veni. There's so much that we've talked about and touched on, but I just want to give you space to react to it, whether you want to talk about how your communities are responding and feeling, what their outlook is when it comes to climate and sustainability, or if there's anything else that's resonated with you. Yeah, Tynice.
As far as our community, one thing I can say, and I can agree with Whitney, we face a lot of barriers. It's a lot of challenges. And one thing we all know in New Orleans, that even if, residents or community members don't have, like the knowledge about climate change, like we feel and see the difference. Like we all know that we are affected by hurricanes and tropical storms. And, when you're in a disadvantaged community and you don't have resources and you don't have the knowledge, it's almost like, like it's the end of the world. Like there's nothing that can help us. There's nothing that can save us. And if it is, like, why aren't those resources available to us? So for me, just being out and active in a community and, just talking to community members about climate change, and even the thought of just like introducing solar panels and, battery systems to support it, they don't understand it. So it is challenging because it's almost like literally teaching them a course or like reinventing the wheel to help them understand. So that is one of the challenges, right? And so just being out and able to have like different events, in our space to actually invite community members where the resources are now here at your fingertips, right? We actually have people in place to speak to you about what is going on, what can we do to change it, and how can we be better for the environment and the community, and just also, just the impact of it, just to start off with Get Lit, Stay Lit, just to empower restaurants to be first responders in the community in the event of a natural disaster. Like when it happens, you're here to fend for yourself. Like neighborhoods aren't safe for first responders to get to. Like it could be flooded here, there could be power lines down. And so just to have a space that's in walking distance where you can go to get relief. Like when we think about Ida, people died. Like the power was out for 10 days. So then this local restaurant that you see in your community is now a feeding location, a place where you can cool down, get ice cold water, charge your cell phone devices, just to let other family members know, hey, I'm okay. My power is out. But this space right here that's operated by solar panels and battery backup, the grid is down, but we're staying lit, so just that exposure, right? And when you think about it, on the flip side, as far as the restaurants, it also helps them save money on their monthly energy bill. So it's like everybody wants to know, how can I save money? Oh, solar panels can help me do that. And so now when they see solar panels and, the battery systems and this equipment in their community, now they're curious. They want to know about it. They want to learn. And so now we have that space where we can come to and we can share and we can educate them and we can invite, local community leaders to actually explain like how they can get on the pathway to this in their residence, right? And yes, these resources are available to you, and this is how, so it's a work in progress. It's just the beginning. Anybody who wants to help and support that effort, because hurricanes are not going anywhere. And unfortunately, a city like New Orleans and other spaces, like we are hit the most and we suffer. And not only do we lose material things, like we're losing lives. So, the more statements we can have, we want to do a citywide network of 300, right? That's that block by block radius where people can actually walk and go. And, and not just New Orleans, being able to take this and pass it on to our neighbors. Our neighbors are affected by storms as well. So it's just, I feel like in something like this, we're just all better together, whether you're here, whether you're at a space that you're not affected, you can join us in this effort to help. Simple as going to feedthesecondline.org.
There we go. And yeah, I just have to call out something that you said, because I'm seeing we have so many questions that are coming into the Q&A. We don't have time to touch on all of them or many of them. So again, when we put out the recording, people will be able to learn more and or to rewatch, but also hear some of the links I mentioned to learn more. I've also been dropping them in the chat to the different organizations, including feedthesecondline.org and including the Sierra Club website, I believe sierraclub.org/Minnesota. But, I just want to acknowledge something that you said, T, which is that, there are all these reasons that we should embrace different types of solutions, whether it is jobs, whether it is saving money. Benny has referenced like play and learning and just joy and so many other aspects of this. And there are so many different benefits of solutions. Someone asked the question about how we how might we go about navigating politics and people's different political identities? And just one of the things I would say as someone who gets that question often is meet people where they are, start with the things that they care about most, because like one of the things I love about climate change and climate solutions, mainly climate solutions, less about climate change, is that it does connect with all these other things that we care about that can make our lives better. So start from that place. Edward, looking at you because you shared that question in the chat, in the Q&A, like start with understanding what your community cares about and values, and approach the community with that rather than here's what we're doing for the climate, here's what we're doing with the admissions. It's good that they understand that climate change ties in with those things, but I think it's really powerful. And yet we don't have a lot more time, unfortunately, together. I see the time winding down, but I think now is actually a good time to pivot to just giving each of you space to share not just like any final thoughts for today, but also ways that people can support your work or just anything else you want to get across. But I'll go over to you, Veni, for anything you want to share, and again, how people could support the work that you do.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I'm proud of the Etna community, how far it has come. And I wanted to add that everybody's voice need to be heard. When you work at the grassroots level, that's where you see how you can make the impactful changes. Like we used to have these public meetings during this eco-district certification where we had these people votes in each of the aspect of food, social equity, mobility, energy. And when we saw what people wanted, that's how we created like a vision statement towards each aspect. And that's where we are working. So I believe that we are working towards this library. And I saw one question that how a library can make a contribution towards climate change. Well, I wanted to say that climate change, it's not just about like reducing energy or just reducing the temperature, but it also about how as a community you want to create a meaningful impact towards climate change. Library is such an example where people can come, where people can pour their ideas, wanted to have events. I have seen kids, elder people like coming over there and they have such amazing ideas like how they can have these workshops, webinars, like some ideas where they can contribute towards climate change. So library is such a place, like a peaceful place for everybody where nobody is judged and we can all have our ideas outpoured. So that's my like my 2 cents of how a library can contribute towards climate change. And if you visit our website, etnacommunity.org, you will see that how we have achieved, how much grant we have achieved, what are our future plans for the library, and how much we have done. So if you want to make a donation towards our library, feel free to go to our website and any donation will go towards our library. So, but thank you everyone for listening about this, and you can see about how we have achieved the eco districts and how we are working towards achieving those equitable goals.
Yeah, and just to respond to something you said, well, number one, thank you, Veni, for that. But also I think sometimes we take for granted, just on the topic of community, that we don't interact with community all that often. I live in a city, but whether you live in a city or rural area, you could be around people all the time and have your headphones in, or you could go from work to home, or maybe you work from home and you're alone staring at your computer, or you're in an environment, regardless of where you're working, where you're not interacting with people and finding time to come together to collaborate. And so we need those spaces and those community spaces and opportunities for people to come together. So I appreciate and I'm excited to learn more about how that looks in Etna as things go along. It's been exciting to see that things grow and develop. But speaking of communities, before I go back to you, Tynese, to close this out, I want to go to you, Elizabeth, for any just final thoughts for the webinar today, and anything you want folks to know or to shout out to support you in the work that you do.
Thank you. This work is so much more meaningful to me when I can do it with others. We have a better outcome and it's a lot more fun. I would encourage everyone listening today to get involved with something, whether it be climate related or not, whether it be in person or online, whether it be in organizing or grassroots effort or at a city government level, but find something that speaks to you and do the good work, and encourage others to join and find other meaningful ways that they can participate in their community. It's a lot better that way.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you so much for that. And again, I'd encourage folks, if you're looking for different links to the various websites we've mentioned, check out the chat and posts that I put in there, because I've linked to everyone's stuff, how you could get engaged and support and all of that. Tynese T, whatever, I don't know if you have inspiration that you want to share, and you mentioned already feedthesecondline.org, but any just thoughts that kind of close out the panel aspect of this before I close us out for today?
As I mentioned, like, before, like, we are better together. And, if Feed the Second Line, like, we're always on the front line, and we know we can't do this alone. Like, New Orleans is a special place. It's very unique. It's just different. And we're faced with a lot of challenges, not just climate. We're faced with challenges of violence. And so, we're just on the front line, like partnering with other local organizations, like this organization called Ubuntu Village, to just be community members, not just community leaders, to just act as violence interrupters. But we can't do this alone. So, we have it's called nolafulcircle.org. That is the initiative. And all of that goes hand in hand, like regardless of whatever's going on with the climate, violence is real, and we're affected by it. And so we just need the support. Like, it's a small city. We can't do it alone. I just encourage everybody to just help and be a part of it. Like, not just, not just the party aspect of New Orleans. Like, we live here, and so we're better together if we all can just come together and just help support each other. And so you can help just by going to feedthesecondline.org, nolafulcircle.org, but we cannot do this alone.
Wow, I'm just so grateful. We are at the top of the hour, so we are out of time, but I just want to invite everyone to give your reactions, even just drop things in the chat, which we as the host and panelists can see. Any words, just thanks for everyone here. We'll make sure to pass that along to Whitney as well. But what a powerful conversation, and just so thankful for all of you. So inspiring. Just thank you so much. This was incredible. And I also just want to point folks, like this, I mentioned there will be a recording available of this webinar available after the fact. So we will blast that out to everyone who's registered, who was able to attend and who wasn't able to attend. Yeah, there are 2 other webinars happening in this series. So in a week from today at the same time, there's the Schools for Climate Education Teaching and Learning for Drawdown webinar. And you can check that out again at the drawdown.ecochallenge.org website. Webinars are linked right there on the homepage. And there's another one the week after that, same time, same place, Zoom world, Business Unusual, Corporate Contributions to Climate Solutions. So I'm thrilled and excited for what's coming up next, but you all laid the groundwork. So thank you so much, Venny, Tynese, Elizabeth, Whitney, for being part of this. And just as we wrap up, I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything important to mention. But again, I just want to encourage folks, now is still a great time to register for the Drawdown Eco Challenge. Again, at drawdown.ecochallenge.org. And you could learn more about Project Drawdown at just drawdown.org. More about our storytelling work at drawdown.org/stories. And I also mentioned the Drawdown's Neighborhood series at drawdown.org/neighborhood. I got all the links right off the top of my head. So thanks again, everyone. And hope that you all take care and have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of your week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.